Welcome to this video on how to set up Visual Studio Code for Factorio mod API autocompletion and mod debugging and profiling. I will be following this short guide, so if you'd rather have a text version, you can find the link in the description. The first step of the guide is to open the mods directory. I am using the Steam version on Windows, so that path to the mods directory is appdata/Factorio. I am copying this from the wiki, and then in Visual Studio Code I click on Open a folder, paste the address in the address bar, and open the mods. This shows various mods that I have already installed, for example this zip directly from the mod portal and some other unzipped mods that I am locally developing. The next step is to install two extensions. The first one is the Factorio modding toolkit by just a random geek. Second one is some Nicolua. I can see that I have both extensions installed. Now when I open a Lua file, I can already see some highlighting. The next step is to select the Factorio version. Right now the bottom bar here shows Factorio unselected. I click on it and then it auto-detects that I have the Steam version installed. Now I just need to click on this and it configures everything. I want to debug later, so I say yes to this prompt, and this prompt will show up every session, and I want to keep the settings for Factorio, so I'm clicking the most F button. You will have to repeat this every session. I am using the small tutorial mod from the wiki to demo the Lua API autocompletion. For example, if I hover over player here, it can already show me all the functions and properties that are available. And if I start typing, it will suggest me things that are close to what I am typing. In this case, in combat. Now let's call a function here. The language server can also see that the function does not exist. Now let's make the function. As the name suggests, I am expecting to get an entity. However, the language server cannot see this so easily. I have to tell it. Now the language server will suggest properties of Lua entity here in this function. In this case, I want to insert some items and I can just autocomplete it like this. Now, the language server can also tell me that I am missing the function argument. So let's provide it. Now my code is without errors and the Lua server is happy. To debug a mod, you need the initial setup of the extension and another step. In the sidebar, select the Run and Debug tab. Then, as it suggests, click on Create a Launch Station file. The extension pre-fills this with configuration for debugging. Now you just have to click here or press F5. The easiest way to know that you are currently debugging is to see that the multiplayer tab here is disabled because the mod is enabled. Now, as the mod is running, debugger is attached. That means that in Visual Studio Code, I can go into the file and click here on the sidebar to set a breakpoint. Now, every time this code is run, the game will stop and I can inspect local state. So let's move. Now the game is stopped and I can inspect the local state. I can for example see that it's currently tick 1160 and that the player index is 1 as expected. Now this breakpoint will always be hit when I move, but let's go to a place when only be hit if I wear the fire armor. To continue, you just press F5 or with the fire armor crafted, I can now see that the breakpoint is hit again, and I can inspect further properties, for example, the character. Let's continue with F5 and remove the breakpoint so the game doesn't stop always. The ability to inspect local state can be useful if you have situations where print debugging just isn't doing enough. In the debugging section, the extension also set up a profile for mod profiling. Simply select it in the Run and Debug tab in the dropdown. Then press this arrow or F5 to start the game. Now let's do some things to generate some data for profiling. I added an onTick function, so the easiest thing for me to do right now is to just speed up the game. Now I can go back to VSCode and see that indeed, if I don't move and speed up the game tick, the thing that takes the most time is my onTick function. Of course, this is more useful if you have a more complicated mod, where it can maybe reveal some bottlenecks. For example, in my Abandoned Ruins mod that is also currently running, I can see some more timings, and here it is also again obvious that spawning the ruins takes the most time. However, it can be interesting much time, for example, this short util function takes compared to some other function.